evening, Hot Dog alumni. Welcome to the 6th Annual Hot Dog Hall of Fame ceremony. Oh, and welcome to the rest of you as well. It is always great to come home and to see so many familiar faces. I look forward to this event every year, and it's just a reminder of how special Frankfort truly is. I'm Tyler Stock, class of 2005, and I'll be your host again this evening, which mainly means the Hall of Fame committee needs to raise more money so they can hire a professional MC. It's an honor to stand up here and to have the opportunity to introduce yet another prestigious Hall of Fame class. But before we can get to the Hall of Fame inductees, I first want to introduce the other people on stage with me this evening. First, I'd like to introduce the president of the Frankfort Hot Dog Alumni Hall of Fame Board of Directors, Don Rusk. Class of 1964. The Honorable Mayor Judy Sheets. Class of 1970. Superintendent of Community Schools of Frankfort, Matt Rhoda. Not an alumni, but a killer jacket. And Frankfort High School Principal Cindy Long, member of the class of 1996. The Hall of Fame inducted its first class in 2018. Over the past 5 years, we've inducted 49 hot dog alumni and 6 honorary hot dogs. Our distinguished alumni include doctors, lawyers, soldiers, philanthropists, entrepreneurs, athletes, journalists, teachers, and one rock star. This year's class, just like the 5 before it, is exceptional. At this time, it is my privilege to invite the newest members of the Hot Dog Hall of Fame to join us. Now, a few reminders, and then we'll get started with the Hall of Fame introductions. Our program this evening will run as follows. I'll give a brief introduction of our 2023 inductees, and I emphasize brief so that I don't steal all the material. Each inductee will then be given 5 or 6 minutes to speak up here at the podium. We would love to allow more time to each of our deserving guests to speak, but we also know that you guys are all sitting on cafeteria chairs, and let's face it, we all have short attention spans. At the conclusion of each speech, Don Rusk will present each inductee with their Hall of Fame plaque. Inductees, if you see Don Rusk pacing, gesturing wildly, or music starting to play like at the Oscars, then please try to wrap it up. Now I'd like to welcome the top dog to the podium, the Honorable Mayor Judy Sheets.
On behalf of the City of Frankfort, I'd like to congratulate all honorees. We're very proud of them. We have several Hall of Fame members from past years, and tonight I'd like to introduce those. So as I say your name, would
received a master's and a PhD in mechanics and astronomy from Indiana University. He was director of the Lowell Observatory in Arizona from 1926 until 1952. Earl Carl Slipher, known as EC, graduated Frankfurt High School in 1902. After receiving a BA in astronomy from IU, EC worked at Lowell as well, where he became one of the first to standardize photographic plates for photometric measures. Accepting the awards on behalf of the Slipher brothers is someone who can explain better than I the scientific importance of these two brothers. Please welcome from Lowell Observatory in Arizona, the historian of Lowell Observatory, writer and researcher, Kevin Schindler.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really honored to be here on behalf of the entire Slipher family, especially Clark and Diane, who've been great hosts this weekend, and also my colleague at the Observatory, Sherry Schaefer. We came here from Flagstaff to help celebrate this because the Slipers in astronomy are legendary names, and it's something I want to get across today. There's the saying by Isaac Newton, if we've seen further, it's because we stand on the shoulders of giants. And the Slipers were true giants in astronomy, and their work is still as important today as it was back when they were doing it more than 100 years ago. If we go back in time to 1914, there was a science meeting in Evanston, Illinois, and there were leading scientists from around the country there to talk astronomy. And there was one astronomer who stood up and spoke. And when he was finished, the entire audience of astronomers stood up and gave him a standing ovation. This is just not done at science meetings. It's unprecedented. That man's name was Vesto Slipher, V.M. Slipher. What he shared was revolutionary in astronomy and our understanding of the universe. And it changed our knowledge of the size and scope of the universe. What he had discovered was the first evidence of the expanding universe. And so he got a standing ovation because the scientists didn't really know exactly what his research said, but they did know that it told us the universe was much older and much faster than we ever could imagine. But they also gave a standing ovation because of the work that he did to achieve this. Why didn't anybody do this before now? Is because he was hardworking, dedicated, devoted. I think qualities that he learned living in Frankfurt and going to high school here. At the time, there were these things in space called spiral nebulae. They were fuzzy blobs in space. And a lot of scientists thought they were young solar systems in making. And so the director of the observatory asked VM to use an instrument called a spectrograph. And a spectrograph you attach to a telescope, it pointed at something in space, and you get light from that object in space you're looking at, and the spectrograph breaks it down into its individual parts. Kind of like we all have our own fingerprints. Everything you look at in the sky has its own fingerprint of light. And so people have done that. You set it up, you point a telescope, and you take a picture maybe for 5 minutes, you have the telescope open looking. Well, Slipher was looking at these things and they were really fuzzy and really faint. And he did exposures sometimes up to 80 hours. And so what he would do is set the telescope up with a spectrograph and a photographic plate, and he would open the telescope up, and then for the next several hours, he would look for a small, what's called a guide scope, to make sure it's following, tracking across the sky. And he would look through that thing for hours at a time, not taking a break, because if you take a break, you might get a fuzzy image. You're tracking this picture. He did it for hours, looking through this stupid little eyepiece. And then at the end of the night, he would close it down. Next day, move the telescope, open it up on that object, and continue the exposure. Several nights in a row. Nobody had ever done anything like this because there's no reason to. Right? What would you learn? Well, by doing this, Liam Slipher was able to detect for the first time the expanding universe. This changed the scope of astronomy forever. And he won awards. The leading astronomy and science institutions awarded him for these findings. He went on to a very successful career. That was the beginning of his career. He spent his entire professional career in gold. He was a director for 40-some years, in addition to doing the science. He was also a leader of the community. He helped found the local school and really laid the groundwork for what's being done in science today. And so it's just revolutionary. I can't overemphasize how important his work was. But then there's his brother. To give kind of double duty to the Slipher name, his younger brother Earl graduated in 1902, I think it was, from Franklin High. And he followed his brother to Indiana University and then to Lowell Observatory. And he went into planetary astronomy. He studied planets, especially Mars. And he made more photographs of Mars than anybody else in the world. For decades, he was the leader of that. And he also captured the first color photograph of Mars. Something else he did that we do today is something called image stacking. When you take pictures of the sky, you might take a whole bunch of pictures and then combine them into one. And so you get rid of some of the fuzzy parts, keep all the really precise parts. He did that. He was the first astronomer to do that, what we call image stacking. And so it revolutionized how we do astronomy. And so he went on also to a successful career. 3 times he led expeditions to South Africa, 1930s, 1950s. And at a time when that's when thing wasn't done. We're talking about expeditions that took almost a year to complete because you got to take a ship across the ocean to get to where he was going. And in fact, on the return trip in 1939, he was delayed coming back because when he was gone, World War II happened. And so he wasn't able to come back and learn the schedule trip. These trips he made allowed him to capture images of Mars that nobody had ever done before. And it really helped lead to the era of the 1970s and 80s and beyond of sending spacecraft to Mars and understanding the surface of the planet. So both these guys were revolutionary scientists, but also very important community members. And I think that's something else I think they learned by growing up in a community like Flagstaff. They lived more time in Flagstaff, but growing up in Frankfurt, because they both said it's not enough to do our jobs, do science, we also have to contribute to the community. And so they both did that. I mentioned a little bit about Besto. You see, he was mayor of Flagstaff at one point. He served on the city council. He was the founding president of a hotel association. He was on the board of the university for years. He served in the state senate for several years. So they both were very successful in science, but also as community leaders, community builders. And they were both recognized for this work. Today, the name Slipher in scientific circles, people do this. They're held because of the work they did. They really laid the foundations. They were truly giants If you ever look at a map of the moon, there's a Slipher crater. If you look at a map of Mars, there's a Slipher crater. Honorary PhDs they were awarded. It's just, if you come to the observatory visit, my office is in fact in the Slipher building. You got it wrong. And so I know many of you are either Slifers or no Slifers in this room. But if you go down to Flagstaff, you'll see just how important they were to the development of astronomy. So it's really an honor for me to be here, to be able to talk about them and represent the family. They're just incredible contributions they made. Thank you for letting me be part of it.
Thank you, Mr. Schindler, for taking time out of your schedule to travel here to honor these two distinguished graduates. And now I'd like to introduce a man who really needs no introduction because he's had such a tremendous impact on the students at FHS for decades. This year's honorary Hall of Famer has been around so long, it might be surprising to know that you're not a graduate of Frankfort High School. Actually, he's a graduate of Edgewood High School and then Indiana State University. Clarence Worthen taught industrial arts at Frankfort High School for 41 years and was the head wrestling coach for 37 of those years. His teams won 6 conference championships, 1 team semi-state, and he coached 3 individual state champions. In 2001, he was inducted into the Indiana High School Wrestling Coaches Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, Clarence Worthen.
Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. My mom tried to teach me that lesson since I was small. Have I ever learned it? Not completely, but it's still there. It's been a life journey to try to do that. So I'd like to share my story with you, how I got to be where I'm at. I believe every one of us can look back and see people that God's put in your life to encourage you, to make you a better person, to encourage you to become a better productive citizen. I had several of those. First of all, my parents were good examples. They taught me to work hard and to be persistent to get things done. So looking back at these people, my parents taught me that. And then my second, when I got to high school, my wrestling coach, Jerry Espy, was in the first slide. He was a first-year teacher coach out of Indiana State University. He took me under his wing and taught me how to wrestle, taught me how to maneuver my body. I was a dumb body at the beginning. I always reached back and made stupid moves and got stuck. But he persistently worked with me until I improved. And so, only had 2 years of high school wrestling. My senior year, he asked me about going to college, and no one's ever gone to college in my family. And I said, well, that wasn't in my plan. So he convinced me that I could go to college and I could be something. In fact, he came over one Saturday and picked me up at my house, drove me to Terre Haute from Bloomington, Indiana, and got me signed up, got me fill out my papers, got me registered, got me accepted at the university. While I was there, he introduced me to the wrestling coach, Chuck Sanders. He also introduced me to the department head and Dr. Larson. So when I got there, those are my two people I knew. But he took the time to invest in me, and probably beyond what was his responsibility. For that, I'm very grateful. When I got to college, Chuck Sanders kind of took over that spot. Chuck encouraged me to, for 4 years, I participated in the wrestling program. And when I asked him, as naive as I was, with 2 years of high school wrestling experience, thinking that I was a lot better than I was, he encouraged me, and it sounded like, man, you're going to be just great in our program, you're just going to be something additive. So I go in there, and what do I find? 3 Pennsylvania state champions in my weight class in the male. So I had no place to go except wrestle Pennsylvania state champion. So needless to say, I became the practice guy for 3 guys for 4 years. But I learned a lot of wrestling, and I learned a lot of good technique. So Chuck Sanders was very encouraging. While I was at the university, I also got involved in InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. And through that organization, I was working with campus ministry, and I met a man called Don Hughes. Don come down every month to meet with me and to encourage me in my spiritual walk and also in my endeavors with campus ministry. He was the area director for Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. Upon graduation, he invited me to come to Indianapolis to work with him on weekends and during the summer. And I'd been looking for a place to go to teach and coach, and I really didn't know where to go. I had offers in Iowa, I had offers in Michigan, which paid a whole lot more than Indiana does. But through his guidance, I was able to find a job at Greenwood, Indiana, where I was the assistant wrestling coach and martial arts teacher. Some of you educators would be, my first year there, they started an electronics program. And I was the first teacher, and we had no curriculum. And we had a North Central evaluation that year. So I had to come up with a 3-year curriculum plan in a hurry for the North Central evaluation. And so I struggled to get that done. And I completed that. And 4 years there, I began to want to be a head wrestling coach. Needed to have the ego that I have. I thought I could be a head wrestling coach. So I what kind of spurred that is we had our first state champ. I was for that school. So I started looking around, and while I was at Greenwood, I made friends with a guy by the name of Warren Clint. Warren was another teacher, industrial engineer, taught auto mechanics, and a couple of other things. And so when I started looking around for a head wrestling job, I come to find out that my new friend Warren was Larry Hughes' brother. So Larry Hughes and Warren talked about me and told me to apply here. And so when I came up and applied and interviewed, I was successfully offered the job. So I told him I'd let him know. At that same time, I was engaged to my wife, and we'd been planning a December wedding. And so I didn't think it was right for me to run off to another city and not be able to help with the planning. But, Joanna told me, she said, well, you want to be president, you want to be head coach. So she moved our wedding up from December to August so that we could get married, move, and start a new job all the same week. And little did I know that those were the three most stressful things in a man's life. And I do it all in 1 week. Crazy. But I didn't know I was supposed to be stressed. So I did it. And that brought me to Frankfurt. The other man that took me under his wing when I got to Frankfurt was John Milholm. John was the assistant principal, and he took us under his wing and helped us get settled in Frankfurt, Indiana. I didn't know anything about Frankfurt, Indiana. So, I'm thankful that God put people in my life every step of the way to here. And once I got here, I began to recruit every boy that I could. I began to try to encourage every able to wrestle. And people see me come down the hall, they would start. They didn't want to hear, you need to wrestle, you need to wrestle, you need to wrestle. And I tried to talk big guys and small guys. I think I even tried to get Holmes. He was about a 98-pounder, maybe a 78. But we needed small guys, so I was after everybody. So, I guess the rest of the story is pretty much it. I worked hard, I recruited, and I had great students while I was at Frankfurt High School, in the classroom and also in the wrestling room. One of the things that the students told me one time, he said, you know, he was in my class, he said, you expect us to be the same in the classroom as you do in the wrestling room. And I said, that's right. I expect you to give me 100% in both areas. And I tried to encourage that by example and also by encouragement, by verbal confirmation. And I just think everybody that God put in my path, every boy that wrestled for me, I think, can we always get along with everybody? But I tried to point them in the right direction. I tried to love them. I tried to support them. I tried to make them understand the right path in life. To me, character is far more important than winning and losing wrestling matches. And so that was my goal, to make young men know that they could be warriors, they could be champions, but they could also be gentlemen. And that was my goal in life. And so throughout this whole career, 45 years of teaching, I feel like I've been on a freight train hanging on to the booze, being dragged down the tracks with whatever open doors that I was offered. And for that, I'm eternally grateful for everybody that participated, everybody that God put in my life. And all I can say at this point is God is good all the time. Thank you.
Apparently I'm a lot taller than the rest of the speakers, so I'll work on adjusting the mic here. Thank you, Coach. Our next inductee is Fred Carter. Fred graduated Frankfort High School in 1949 after marrying Mitzi Gaffney in 1952. Fred built his own successful retail business. In 1972, he became president of Citizens Building and Loan. Fred has served for decades with countless civic organizations, including Frankfort Main Street, the Community Foundation, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber of Commerce. In 2022, on Fred Carter Day, Mayor Sheets proclaimed him Mr. Hot Dog for a lifetime of service to Frankfort. Ladies and gentlemen, Fred Carter.
First of all, I'm going to apologize because I'm probably going to have to read most of the presentation today. Unfortunately, in 91, my hard drive is not spinning quite as fast as it once did. So with that, shortly after graduation, I started to start with the business. I was doing very well until the Korean conflict and the draft. Rather than be drafted, I joined the Army for administration school. The greatest day of my life was April 20th, 1952, when my high school sweetheart, Mary Mitzi Gaffney, and I were married at First Christian Church in Frankfort. In November, I received orders to ship out to Berta and friends. Fortunately, Mitzi was able to join me the next month. And we already decided after my discharge in March of '54, we would return to Frankfort, restart the business, and raise our family here. And it was a business decision we never made. After returning, I joined Frankfort JCs, was involved in numerous projects over the next 14 years. They get you out after 36. One of the major projects was getting the Indiana Junior Miss program to Frankfort. And we made a presentation, and Frankfort was awarded the 1965 Indiana Junior Miss program. Fred Carter Day, that's kind of neat. But I was invited to serve on the Citizens Wayne Hall Board of Directors in 1960. I had no idea that there was going to be something that would be totally changing my career and my life in the future. At the end of the term, then I was then hired as far as vice president vice president and assistant managing officer. And it was offered to me in 1966, and I accepted. In 1971, my predecessor, Jim Sinkford, retired, and I was then deemed the president and CEO, and that lasted then until our merger with Lincoln Federal in 2000. And during my tenure, very active and progressive members of our board, and two of which are prior inductees, Hall of Fame, Robert K. Ryan and Bob B. Ransom. Citizens enjoyed a very successful growth in assets when we moved into our new building in 1977. We developed Eastwood Addition and Phase 1 of South Ridge and Federal subdivisions. And so for many years, I was actively involved in many business-related activities. Some of those activities were serving the board of Indiana League Savings Institutions and serving as its chairman for year 1989. Also served on the Federal Bank Board and numerous state and national savings bank and financial committees. My greatest joy at Citizens was helping many people achieve their dream of owning their own. Currently, I serve on the board of Artists of Progress and Clinton County Economic Advancement Foundation, and I'm privileged to be a part of a great career tech center community. I'm passionate about the opportunity the tech center will provide for students in Frankfort County. I've been asked many times why would I spend so much time on civic organizations, programs, and meetings. Really, the answer is very simple. Frankfurt's my town. The place my brother Raymond and I grew up, Forever Hot Dogs. The place Lindsay and I chose to live and raise our daughters, Sydney and Debbie. The place that given us friends we'll never forget. The place that's given us a full and wonderful life. The place where neighbors care about neighbors. And this is a place that's given me back so much more than I can ever give back. I love my town. That's why. I want to thank Don Rusk and Don Stock and the entire Hot Dog Night Hall of Fame board for this recognition. I'm deeply honored and humbled to be included with these distinguished inductees seated here and those who were inducted before. And it's very special to me to be here with my brother-in-law, very close friend, Dr. Lee. And with us today is my niece, Jan Johnson, and her husband, Roger, from Scottsdale, Arizona, and my two cousins, Shirley Wood from Cartersville and Susie Richards, and her husband, John, from Indianapolis. Thank you for being here. Appreciate that. I do want to mention too that I have a whole bunch of family here. I see hands waving. I'm blessed with a wonderful family and appreciate you guys all being here. Ladies and gentlemen, that's why. Thank you.
At this time, I want to welcome Frankfort Community School Superintendent and Hot Dog Hall of Fame board member, Mr. Matt Rhoda.
Thank you, Tyler, and just once again, congratulations to all of our Hall of Fame inductees. All of you are worthy of this honor tonight, and it's great to be here to celebrate this with you and your families and friends. So it is a tradition of excellence that we've coined it, right, Mrs. Long, that we are excited to be able to represent a long line of people who've come through Frankfort High School. That was just talking to someone beforehand, Mr. Ransom. It's all in your name and what you do, not only for your high school, what you do in your life for your family. So we thank you for what you've done, and we honor you tonight. And we have a lot of eligible, probably people out there, Frankfort hot dogs, that are deserving of this honor. And in order to nominate someone for this, you go to the frankforteducationfoundation.org website. We have hit Hall of Fame and hit nomination form, and we want to continue this tradition of excellence of honoring those past hot dogs so that we can continue this tradition. Thank you.
Our next inductee is Dr. Lee Dupler. He is a member of the Frankfort High School class of 1951, a graduate of Indiana University Medical School. Dr. Dupler served his country in the Army before returning to Frankfort, where he cared for his community for more than 30 years. Dr. Dupler developed the first intensive care unit at Clinton County Hospital and was medical director of Bradford Woods Summer Diabetic Camp for Children. Speaking on behalf of Dr. Lee Dupler is his son, also Dr. James Dupler.
Probably the worst public speaker in the family, and I get picked to speak. So thank you, we're humbly grateful. My friend Bob and Dad honored from the Education Foundation. And along with Dad's long list of accomplishments, I'm going to go off script just a little bit and tell you a few stories. January 19th, 1934. Not only his dad's birthday, but it's Robert E. Lee's birthday, and Grandma Dupler liked the name Lee. So he started out as Lee, although most of you know him as Joe. He was born in San Diego. His father was a career Marine. He was stationed there. He started out school going in a one-room schoolhouse, K through 12 in San Diego. Grandma Dupler would cook for the Marines. She was a great cook, as my family can testify. And Dad would serve coffee in the mess hall. And those of you old enough to know, a cup of coffee is a cup of Joe. That's where Joe came from. And my mom tells a story, she didn't even know his name was Lee until he graduated high school and saw it on his diploma. When the U.S. entered World War II, my grandmother, who never drove a car before, had 2 boys and was also pregnant. And she packed everybody in a Willys Jeep and drove across country back home to Frankfurt. She was quite a woman. She had family on North Clay Street, and eventually they moved to Green Street, where Dad grew up. He likes to tell a story, he had a paper route. He told me this many times in middle school, so I would get some type of job at that age too. He would get up early from Green Street, go to the Frankfurt Times building, and his paper route led him down Armstrong Street to the other side of town to Southeast Street, where 2 beautiful Gaffney girls were growing up. And so he delivered papers there. One morning, he wrote "Good Morning Carol" on the newspaper in the corner. Rumor is that Jim Gaffney was not too happy, but he did pass the note along to Mom. So Dad graduated high school in '51, as you've heard. They got married in '55. He went to IU School of Medicine. And then in '61, in San Antonio, went to Brooke Army Hospital, where he taught and developed a curriculum for the MASH units that were to be deployed as well. He served there for 3 years, and his troops called themselves Lee's Trees, and he was awarded the Mastorius de Multiskillis for his service as a joke from his troops. So we moved here in 1964. He had plenty of opportunities to practice in bigger towns, but he didn't want to raise his children in Indianapolis. He wanted to come back to Frankfurt for all the things that Fred Boat just told you about, and we're glad he did. His first order of business when he got here was to get the hospital kind of up to standards and get it board certified to where they were accredited through the State Hospital Association. Moved on to doing the ICU. Well, all the kids would remember him back in the day when you got an EKG in the mail for 3 days later and the doctor read it and would mail it back to the physician that consulted with him. Hard to imagine that nowadays. Through his work in Rotary Club and Boys and Girls Club, he loves his town. I've been told he was a champion fundraiser for the Boys and Girls Club. He saw education as a very high priority. So it's my rock. Didn't matter where you go to school, didn't matter what you do when you get there. It says stay in school. They can take everything else away from you, but they can't take your knowledge away from you. Always serve others, always be active in your community. So we just want to thank you, humbly honored and very grateful for honoring our family. Thank you.
Before we present our final 2 awards, I'd like to introduce Frankfurt High School Principal Cindy Long.
That's a lot to follow up with today, but we'd like to thank you all so much for coming today. This ceremony for all of us that have grown up here, all of us that remain here, it's just a time that evokes so much pride in our community, in our school, in our roots, in our history, and we're just so proud to share that with you today. I'd like to share a little bit of history. When the Hot Dog Hall of Fame was started, basically we didn't have 2 coins to rub together. The group was banded together. They decided they were going to do it. They had some generous donations from the Farmers Bank and from Goodwin Funeral Home. And finally, with some industrious members of our group, we decided to put together a golf outing, which we have so much to thank Craig Mundell. I'm not sure how he's still vertical at this point. I've seen him working at the Hot Dog Festival today. He ran that golf outing, and we finally made some money, which was really exciting. And that's always good, right? Secret fundraising, as you know. So with 100 plus alumni golfers that showed up yesterday that braved some serious humidity and heat, we've been able to put together some really good funds. And as the principal of Frankfort High School, it's been exciting to watch our current hot dogs stand in the hallway, reading the plaques about wonderful people like we have sitting here with us today. And the Hall of Fame has been generous enough to make a donation to our band, to esports, which I had to convince some board members is a real thing. So if you're a youngster and we have esports here at Frankfort, we had to convince some people that that was real and that's a worthy cause. Absolutely, it is. And in just this past year, our group has agreed to sponsor our Senior Recognition Night. Our Senior Recognition Night is a long-standing tradition at Frankfort. This will be our 38th year this year of this. We have a 3-course meal. Each student is individually recognized in our theater, and it's just a very special night. And I hope that our students walk away feeling like Mr. Carter said, as so many of us do every day, this is my town, this is my Frankfort. And we know that those students will soon be sitting here and we'll be recognizing their wonderful accomplishments. So we just wanted to thank you all for coming, let you know what we're doing with some of the funds that have been generated by awesome people like you as you give to the Frankfort Education Foundation and as you bring the Hot Dog Hall of Fame up to all of its glory. So on behalf of all of us, I thank you so much.
Okay, today not only do we get to recognize our oldest inductees, but we also get to present our youngest inductee. A graduate of Frankfort High School class of 2003, Nicole Rudolph earned a BFA in costume design from Ball State University and an MFA in material culture from University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Nicole worked at Colonial Williamsburg and was artistic director for American Duchess Shoes. She is now a full-time fashion history content creator on YouTube, where she brings her experience in shoemaking, sewing, and tailoring to an international audience. Ladies and gentlemen, Nicole Rudolph.
So not surprisingly, 20 years ago when I graduated, I had no idea that I was going to end up doing this. YouTube didn't exist at that time, neither did almost any of the social media that we have today, not even Facebook. So the idea that something like what I do would even exist was so far beyond my imagination. And when I really got into this though was back in high school. I started doing theater because I really wanted to be on stage. I wanted to be in musical theater. I wanted to be maybe a choir teacher or an actor on stage, something big like that. And when I started here, Mr. Clausen had one rule. If you're on stage, you're also going to work behind the scenes. And inevitably, I ended up not only picking up working on the set, but I also ended up picking up costumes. And thankfully, Mrs. Fletch was there to insist that I continue to do that year after year and get involved with that, because as it turns out, when I first started doing YouTube, I had a phone, and that was it. And I quickly realized how much that was not going to be enough. And now I have probably a good 10 lights, 3 or 4 cameras, a whole bunch of microphones. I basically work as a costume designer, a set designer, a lighting designer, a sound designer, and do all of my editing myself. I don't have a team that works for me. So it ended up being amazing that I was encouraged to go into all of these other things that I didn't think that was going to be my path in life, but it ended up being the thing that got me through, learning all of these really weird skills that kept coming back around. Once I graduated from Frankfurt, I went on to Ball State University. I did theatrical design there, where they realized pretty quickly, just like I did after the first audition, that I was not cut out to be on stage, but really needed to be behind the scenes and really thrive there. So I had a great opportunity to learn a lot more about all the different aspects of theater before I graduated in 2007 straight into the recession and had almost no hope of finding a job in theater. So many of the theaters were shutting down during that time. And the only job that I could find ended up taking me over to Virginia to work for Colonial Williamsburg behind the scenes, where I worked in a very large costume shop, churning out thousands and thousands of 18th century garments for people to wear out and be in character and do the trades and all sorts of crazy things there. But it wasn't long before I weaseled my way into managing some of the on-the-job systems, where I was there in costume, helping with all of the different tourists that were coming in, all the different guests that we had, teaching the trades as they would have been done in the 18th century. And I quickly realized how many people I was fortunate to work around that knew so much. And they not only had the knowledge of all of this amazing history that had honestly been completely forgotten. No one was making 18th century shoes anymore, obviously, but it turns out they were. And they wanted to share all of that knowledge with me. And I realized pretty quickly that that was really the thing that I wanted to do. It wasn't to sew things, it wasn't to make things necessarily, it wasn't just to read a bunch of history, but it was to share that, to get really excited about the strange things that I could learn, and to share that with other people. And I also realized at that point that maybe the job I was in wasn't the best way to do that. In fact, one of my coworkers had just spent the last more than 10 years finally writing a book. It took him forever, and I knew that that wasn't quite what I wanted to do. So I went off to a university in Nebraska, University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and picked up material culture, which is, as we like to say, the study of the history of stuff. So every single thing in this room, every single thing you wear, the purses you carry, the chairs you sit on, someone designed it, someone made it, someone engineered it, and then someone used it. And I wanted to know all about that process, not just about fashion, but all those different things, because that was the history that really fascinated me and I think answered a lot of questions for people. And so I had the opportunity then to take that knowledge and moved on to a different job that encouraged me to start sharing that with people. And as 2020 hit and a lot of things changed, I was able to start up my own YouTube channel to continue sharing all of the strange things that I was finding, and hopefully provide people a little bit more context about the way the world works. Why do we have zippers? They were originally called. Why do we have weird sizing systems in clothing that doesn't work? Why do our shoes look like they do? Why do we wear high heels? Why do only women wear high heels? All of these were questions that people consistently came up and asked me, and I wanted to be able to answer those for them. And so though I look back at my life and realize that most of the jobs I applied for, most of the things I tried to achieve directly didn't work out, but all of it ended up taking me on a path where I was granted the most amazing opportunities, met the most amazing people, and in the end, the thing that I really wanted to do was get a chance to share all the opportunities and the amazing time that I've had with everyone else, and I still get to do that to this day. So all in all, I'd say it's pretty successful.
Okay, our final inductee. Before I make this announcement, I'll ask this side to really keep it together. Our final inductee for this year is Dan Scott, FHA class of 1978. Of course, everybody knows him as Bones. Most of you probably didn't know his name was Dan. He began work career at Georgie Porgy's when he was 15 years old. In 1984, he worked for a label company in Terre Haute, then returned to Frankfurt in 1989 to start his own company, High Tech Label. Dan's very successful business creates labels for businesses coast to coast. Dan and High Tech have been important contributors to local community organizations for decades. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Bones Scott.
Good afternoon. What a day for me, for the family, for my life. My whole, I have a little outline, but it all got changed whenever I hear other people speak, and then like, no, maybe that's something we're talking about now. But from a friend at the beginning of the hot dog festival, I printed for that, you know, all the way to him becoming Mr. Hot Dog. Did the labels for that honor. That was really cool. So it's been just really mixed things up for me a little bit. But to Don's phone call to me, he's back there, and it was like, what a call. I make my living on the phone, and then I get Don's call, and he tells me about being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I said, Don, are you punking me? You know, are you sure? And he said, yeah, we're sure. And so I want to thank the committee and everyone for thinking that I was deserving of that. I really appreciate it. This whole program is just awesome for our community, and to recognize graduates and people that have went out and done well in their life, and it's really neat to bring that back. And the golf outing that Cindy mentioned earlier is so fun. It's like a big reunion for, you know, all the classes. And you see teachers and people graduating above you and below you. And it's just so enjoyable to witness people
see someone and a smile come on their face and then walk straight towards them, you know, to just get love. And that's what Frankfurt's about to me. I'm a hot dog through and through, you know, with my nice new suit for, and to get Nicole's thumbs up on it today, she said, hey, I love the suit. So really, really nice. Talking about my high school days, I loved going to high school. I mean, it went too fast for me. I enjoyed my teachers, they made a difference. I wasn't an exceptional student, but they took me under their wings and encouraged me. And I don't know of any teacher, any class that I didn't like, or I didn't like the teacher. It was just all good. And I want to mention, people talked yesterday. It's like, hey, I can't wait to hear the remarks, you know. And it's like, oh, well, you all buckle up. A few teachers that I want to mention that really made a difference is Mr. Melhall is one of them. Don suggested that I maybe watch some of the past inductees and their speeches and that. So one night I binge watched that, I don't know, 12:30, and picked up a lot of stuff. But Mr. Melhall has touched so many people's lives, and he really is truly a Hall of Famer. I always loved him and what he meant to me and the encouragement. Till last night, the last person I shook hands with before I left was him. And I thank him. And Mr. Gary Curzon, I was a TA for him in PE class, so I took a hard class there, you know what I mean? And so to get my grade, he made me run a mile. Well, my nickname was Bones, and I wasn't a runner, you know. And so he sat on the bench in the gym, and he counted my laps. And I'm like, no, earn it, you know. So he made me earn that. And then I watched him outside of being a teacher, and many of them that become business people as well. And that was something in my heart, and my dream always was, even as a high school kid, to own my own business or do my own thing. And so that was another person, teacher, that not only had him in class, but also watched what he did with his life outside of that. And another story about coming back to Frankfurt with Gary was we went on a Cubs trip, and I had a little boy, or two young boys, and I go, Kurz, tell me about, what do I do here? And he said, go to everything that you can, because it'll be over before you know it. And so anything that the boys were involved in, I could count on one hand because of the blessing of high tech that I could get there and not miss that event. And so that was good advice from him, and used it in my life, and it paid off. Another teacher is Mr. Paul Kaplan. I don't know if he's here or not. He's going out. There he is. Printing class, 1977 probably. And loved the class, had it all. And who would have thought that that would have planted the seed that eventually led me to my career, you know? And Mr. Kaplan and I still have a relationship. He runs his own business and comes to high tech to get some labels, and that's all good. So now I'm printing for him. He taught me how to do it. But I also want to speak about Frankfurt in the community and what it means. And I'm a hot dog through and through, and I love Frankfurt. And when I wanted to run down the dream of starting high tech label, it's a business I could have located anywhere. Vance and I was talking about that yesterday. That I could have been anywhere, but I thought it best to come back to a community where I would be supported. And so we got the gears turning and moving towards that. And it was came back and I needed to, start a business, I needed to get a loan, Farmers Bank, and they're a bank for life. That's for me for sure, So my first car in high school to my first loan to start High Tech, and a little story on that. I had my business proposal together and went in to meet with John Hacker at Farmers Bank. And I graduated with Bill. His son was in my class. So I'm going over my proposal and I look up and I'm all nervous, and he turned over the page and he smiled. And he turned over the page of each one of those, and he got to the end and he smacked the back of that paper and he said, "Well, you're impressed, Mosey. I'll have the money for you Thursday." I was like, "Yeah, get started." So, and I continued to bank with Farmers Bank. Brad Cunningham played golf with Darb yesterday, and we played Little League together, and now he's my banker, and that's just so cool. So to run my business in Frankfort and to be able to accomplish what we've done, Kenny Estes would always tease me that in Napa, he said, "Bones, you are the best kept secret in Frankfort." No one really realized what all we were doing, and I always appreciated that. I need to thank my family. I obviously have a bunch here, and their support is just with me all the time. My mom and dad, my mom especially, see pictures of her. She taught me to be the man that I am today, to be kind, to be loving, to be generous, to be forgiving, and those things have paid off handsomely for me. And I get to work every day with Sandra in my business, and it's just, I'm living the dream. Some people say that sarcastically, but I truly am someone that every day lives the dream, and it's just so cool. And Donna mentioned that students may be watching this, and it would apply to, I think, anyone, that when you have a dream, run down that dream and work at it every day, which I do, like I'm going to fail, and stand back and see how amazing the results are. If you really give it to God, and then you go work at it, you're going to make it. Another thing, going back to high school, I knew I was going to get mixed up a little bit. I wasn't much of an athlete, so when you asked me about wrestling, I really wasn't into wrestling a sweaty guy. I didn't sweat, so I didn't want any part of that. And going back to Mr. Millhall, I love basketball, but I was a little dude. I mean, seriously, I didn't think I weighed 100 pounds when I graduated. And so when we got to do the freshman year in the South Park, Mr. Millhall put his arm around me and said, "Mosey, I don't see much playing time. How would you like to be managed?" And so he wasn't giving up on me. Like, come on and do that. But I just am really thankful to the board and everyone that's involved in this to make this thing happen. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank God. He blesses me way beyond my imagination. That's what happened in my life. So now it's time to celebrate. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's give a round of applause for all of our inductees. Okay, before we can conclude, I have a few things to wrap it up. First, I'd like to thank, on behalf of the Board of Directors, Ron Brackett and the custodial staff, Richard Salee for video work, Michael Taylor, the Frankfurt High School Marching Band, all the golfers who participated in the Hall of Fame event, and our sponsors, Goodwin Funeral Home and Farmers Bank. Additionally, this afternoon, if you missed it, at the library, the Hoosier Storytellers podcast interviewed two of our inductees, Nicole Rudolph and Mr. Schindler for the Slifer Brothers. You may access this podcast via the Frankfurt Community Public Library's YouTube channel. So if you want to check out that, please do so. Lastly, just want to thank everybody for coming again this evening. Thank you for all your speeches and your encouraging words, and for being here, and for everybody for their supporting them. We hope that everybody will stick around town, have some fun at the Hot Dog Festival, and we look forward to seeing you all again next year at the 2024 Hall of Fame weekend. Thank you, and remember how blessed we all are to be hot dogs.